Hi and welcome to another episode of The Leadership Enigma. Actually, this is part 2 of the episode that I've just done with Max Hill. And again, I'm excited because I think I'm going to call this episode The King's Counsel. Why? Because I haven't just got Max with me, I've actually got Tom online. And well, we're going to have a great discussion, I think, about how both these gentlemen have moved from sole contributor to wonderful team member, but also to leader in their own right. And we're going to hear a little bit about their journey, their lessons. Come back to me just after this break. Hi, I'm Adam Pacifico, and welcome to The Leadership Enigma, a world-ranked, award-winning podcast that's insatiably curious as regards what leaders do, how they do it, and importantly, why. We'll delve into the human doing, but even deeper into the human being and the power of human-centered leadership to drive sustainable change. So whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, corporate executive, each week we speak to global experts, academics, rising stars, ambitious upstarts and disruptors, as together we will discover that success leaves clues. Tom, it's a massive welcome to the Leadership Enigma. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's wait and see how this goes, and then you can thank us. It's great to have you on the show. I have done no real introduction for you, so could you just tell listeners and watchers, who are you?
So my name's Tom Sprange. Like Max, I'm a KC, so I'm a courtroom lawyer. I spend a lot of my time in court and in international tribunals arguing cases. But I also have a management role at our firm, King Spalding. So I'm the managing partner of our London office, and I also was a member of our policy committee for 3 years, which is our committee that's voted in, and each member has a 3-year term, and that's the committee that talks strategy and the future for the firm.
Tom, how long have you been at the firm?
14 years.
Okay, so some time. Max, just remind everyone, how long have you been?
4 months.
4 months. 14 years and 4 months. We could get some great views now on it. Tom, what made you go into an American law firm?
Well, I grew up in Australia, did my legal education in Australia.
Yep.
Came to England like a lot of Antipodeans. I'll get 2 years experience and then I'll go home. I started working for another US law firm, Steptoe & Johnson. Got on a fabulous case that was multi-jurisdictional, high value, very exciting, that lasted for 5 years.
Wow.
And so when it finished, I sort of drew breath and thought, do I really want to go back to Sydney and do much smaller, less interesting cases? And here I am 24 years later.
I asked Max about how and why he kind of went into law in the first place, and I kind of challenged myself with that question. Why did you? Total
accident. I got told by someone who shall remain nameless that I couldn't possibly be a lawyer, and that was quite good incentive for me to at least sign up for law school. But I got a part-time job at the same time working in a barrister's chambers, and so I certainly had this correlation between what I was studying and what I was doing for work, which was research for a tax barrister, ironically.
Right.
But it was really interesting, and I was 17, wide-eyed and impressionable, and just loved it. I've just had natural curiosity for it, and it is a wonderful job in the sense that you keep learning every day, even if you're in your 50th year, and you get to learn so much about so many sectors, so many other people's businesses, humans you're interacting with so many different types. So it is a very exciting, interesting profession to work in, particularly I think with some bias ours, where we're courtroom advocates and we're dealing with witnesses, judges, experts.
Yeah,
it's a fascinating world.
I can see Max nodding at me. Max,
yeah.
Come on.
Well, I just think it's so interesting. I mean, Tom and I have been in discussion for a long time before I joined the firm, but I've only been there 4 months. He hasn't told me until just now that someone said to him, "You can't be a lawyer," and it was from the negative that he constructed the positive.
Yeah.
What he probably doesn't know from me is that I also struggled a lot to get into the profession, and I had more people closing the door in my face when I was trying to be a barrister with no connections in the legal world. And it took me a couple of years to actually get in at any level at all. So there's something there, Tom, actually, isn't there, about us both moving from a position of adversity, and there was something in me. If you ask my wife, who Adam knows well, I was going home at night saying, if I am going to prove these people wrong if it's the last thing I do, and it gives you a real spur. And I guess the same was true of you. And it actually helps when you end up in a management position to say, don't think we've always had it all our own way.
It makes me, I'm laughing because I'm remembering my head mistress's remarks on my report, which said he overestimates his ability and underestimates the challenge ahead of him. So maybe we all share a little bit of negative feedback, which has spurned us on. Max, what drew you to King Spalding?
Yeah, I think that's the right question, Adam, because coming from the bar world, as Tom and I both do, you are, it's a self-employed world. One of the phrases I used to use is you're the captain of your own ship, you're running whatever the case is, and you stand or fall on your ability.
Yeah.
That's not how it works in a big law firm, although your ability still needs to be up there. And what interested me about this firm above all others is the approach it takes to inclusivity. What I mean by, there's different connotations for inclusivity,
right.
And I think we score on all of them actually, but here what I mean is that you have to have practice groups in a big law firm, and they develop over a long period of time. King and Spalding, in fact, is about as old as the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions is in England and Wales. We're talking about a legal entity that's been in existence for about 140 years. It's got that long tail, which gives you assurance. This place has staying power. But in the modern world, that devolves into practice groups amongst the thousands of lawyers who work. What stands out about King and Spalding is that you'll be in a practice group, but then every other practice group will come and have a look, and they'll see, what you may be able to bring to bear. And I found in 4 months that although I have a sort of major role in one practice group, a lot of what I'm doing is coming from elsewhere around the business. There's something in the DNA of the firm where it's, and sometimes people call it being all in, but more often it is just apply your skills to the matter in hand. And if it's a global firm, which is very different to barristers' chambers in London, those complementary skill sets might come from the guy in Singapore, the woman in Los Angeles, and someone in the middle in DC, and you can be attached to that team from London. That's what is actually exciting about being here. And Tom, I know you'd agree with that, because that's been the genesis of the practice groups in the firm.
Well, I've actually got a question for Tom, because I didn't realise the firm had been around for that long. And interestingly, Tom, I spoke to a CEO of actually a Kenya commercial bank, which has already been around for over 100 years. And he talked actually about the weight of coming in as the leader for an organisation that has been around for a long time, and for an organisation that will be around for a long time after he's gone. So how do you approach, or how do you think about that as a senior leader within an organisation that has a rich history and legacy already? And in some ways, you're a gatekeeper for it. And then when you move on to pastures new, that will continue to go. What's your role in that journey?
I think there's three things that we focus on, and certainly have been drummed into me by osmosis rather than diktat. And that's one, professional excellence. You just have to be great lawyers in an institution like ours. That's probably the first and foremost. Second of all, we operate in an incredibly competitive market. I mean, I think people probably underestimate law as a business. There's a handful of firms now who have turnover well into the billions, and another sort of 24 of over $1 billion. So that's big business, and you have to be competitive. Whether you're making phones, cars, or whatever else, you've got to be market leaders. And that means you can't just be good at what you do, you have to be good at business. So I think that's the second thing. And the third thing, and this is something particularly near and dear to Max and I, you have to ensure that the generation coming behind you is better than you, and that you're really nurturing the talent. And so, our trainee program here, the young lawyers that we bring in, the training we give them, the opportunities we give them is one of the most rewarding parts of the job, but also one of the most important. So you hope that one day, you'll get a knock on the
Yeah.
shoulder and say, you were once great, but we're now better, so you can go out to pasture.
Well, in many
So
ways,
those three things.
creating that ongoing legacy. Max, a question actually for both of you. We all started our careers a number of decades ago. Do you think the law still is as attractive to the younger generation coming through as it was maybe when we started, or is it just different? What are you seeing?
Well, fun enough, I think if anything, it's more attractive. And,
Okay.
and I'd say that in two ways. In my former life in public service, the Crown Prosecution Service, we used to look at surveys conducted of students, tens of thousands of students,
Right.
either studying law as a degree or thinking about going to law. And the Crown Prosecution Service was right up there as an employer of choice. And so that on the public service side, it's appealing to people who, on graduating, will have a range of things they could do with that because they know that, to use that phrase, let's make a difference, being in the public sector in the right place.
That real purpose.
It gives you a sense of purpose. So I think there's that.
Okay.
But the second answer, which thinking more about King and Spalding and the private law market, is when I look at the trainees and the associates, as Tom says, the next generation coming up, they're very impressive people. You know, these people would compete in any job market, to be honest, but they have fought their way through application rounds that are pretty daunting in order to secure these positions. And you find them really cranking out first-class work day by day, and no doubt, you know, because they've got an appetite for being where maybe Tom and I are now. So I think the attraction is still there, and the legal market has expanded in ways that I think the potential was there before, but we tended to live in silos, in the same way that the bar was completely siloed away from the solicitor's profession. You wouldn't have had in-house KCs like us in a law firm 30 years ago.
When did that start happening? Do you think KCs coming across?
It was that was so there was a deregulation in about 1990 under the Thatcher government that allowed two things: one, solicitor advocates, and two, probably more importantly and significant in my view, for foreign law firms to practice in England. So that's when you really started to see the development of US law firms in London.
Okay.
That was 1990. I mean, now, you know, I won't name all our rivals, but there were 200 US law firms with London offices, and some of those law firms have hundreds and hundreds of lawyers. So that's what it stems back to.
Okay. Let me come back to this subject. We did some research at High Trick and Struggles about some of the top concerns or worries of CEOs. And one of the top four, I can't remember all four, one of the top four was this ability to attract and retain talent. It's a big worry for leaders in the current climate. I think that may have been enhanced by what we experienced in the pandemic, and it's something that it continues to be a challenge. Tom, let me come to you first. As the managing partner of London, with all that you're doing and involved in at the moment, what are your thoughts in relation to how do you stay relevant and keep attracting and retaining the best of the best in order to be, as you say, have excellent lawyers, to be utterly competitive in a very competitive environment, and also to provide, in essence, the tide will rise at all boats and the younger generation will come and take your spot at some place?
It's a challenge, and it's a challenge because, as Max points out, you're talking about very smart, discerning people.
Yeah,
and I think, and I sincerely believe this. I think that the younger generations inform themselves better than we ever did. They ask questions that we never asked, and they have more choice as well. So that's why I say it's a challenge. But for me, you probably have to ask them as to whether this is successful or not. But for me, the essential things are very interesting work. I think they want to be doing the best and most interesting transactions or cases. So a high quality work. You've obviously got to remunerate them well. The market's very competitive, and it's very public too. So you've got to keep up there. Three, I think the working environment, both nice new offices, but also they want to be working directly with partners and other senior people in the firm, so they get great experience. And four, you got to listen to them. I think we grew up in probably a more hierarchical system where you sort of kept your head down and your mouth shut. They to their credit, don't accept that. That they want to be heard and they want to hear what's going on. So I think you have to be collaborative and respectful of the fact that they're different and they've got different views, and engage with those. But at the same time, when I say this with respect to any of them who are listening, you can't let the tail wag the dog. They've also got to know that they'll be heard and their views taken on board, but the decision might not always be the same as theirs. So the big difference I've noticed is that you treat them like adults from the moment they walk in the door. Whereas I think Max and I would say that when we walked in the door, if you spoke for the first 5 years out of turn, you probably didn't have a job.
Oh, how life has changed. Max, let me come to you.
Oh, yes.
You've been in the firm only 4 months, but you've got quite a high profile. So there are going to be the younger generation who come in and know of you. I want to ask you a little bit about what's that like where people know of you? They've seen you. They've heard of you. How do they interact with you? And how do you encourage them to interact with you?
Well, I think, there's a level of...
Tom's laughing, so there's a good story here.
Yes.
I think there's a level of curiosity. They want to know who you are. And, figuratively and literally, the answer to that is you keep your door open. So anyone can come and talk to me, and I might come and talk to you. So it's genuinely very inclusive. And the other thing I'd say, agreeing with everything Tom just said, is that there's something about the total offer that the firm provides, which has got to be attractive to the next generation. Whether that offer includes the fact that you've got senior figures coming in from elsewhere in the legal system, I don't know. You'd have to ask them whether that's a pull factor. But what hasn't been mentioned yet is the sense of conscience and output of a firm. For example, the pro bono work that we do. Anyone can bring a pro bono matter in. Now, a law firm can't make all its money out of providing its legal advice for nothing. But there's a component of what any member in the firm can do, and this crisscrosses offices around the world, which can be pro bono. It's one of the things that I'm interested in, and I notice people picking up on that when you put that out to tender. I think it's something about the total offering that the firm provides, as well as the sheer breadth of legal practice that people can be involved in. Okay. Remembering that a training contract in a city firm is often broader than a pupillage in a set of chambers. Whether they're still calling them seats or not, you are sitting in different practice areas across your training contract. So you're building all sorts of skill sets that are, I think, broader than we would have picked up as pupils decades ago. So that's why a firm like this is a go-to place. And I have noticed, and if I've noticed it, I'm sure the younger generation have, that in our move from Old Broad Street to number 8 Bishopsgate, not only have we moved into A-grade office premises in the heart of the city.
I'm going to come and visit you soon, John.
You're welcome. But there are far more desks than there are people. That's a simple point, but it's a declaration of intent by a city firm that's by no means just arrived. It's part of the firmament, King Spalding, been here into its 3rd decade now. But the fact that youngsters can see that there's room for growth shows you direction of travel. And something simple like that, I think, can be very meaningful.
Tom, I want to come to you. I appreciate that remuneration is key in trying to be attractive. I'm going to park that. You may well be part and parcel of the team that are creating the strategic direction of the firm. What's the role of purpose, though? How does that play out with recruiting the new talent who are coming in? Because I'm wondering, how much of that is a differentiator now from all the, as you say, the great law firms, and there are hundreds of American firms alone in London. So what role does purpose play in all of this?
I think that really depends on the individual.
Yep.
And I think what we, going back to, and I'll use our trainee program as the example, as Max said, that's an exacting process for them in the sense that, we have hundreds apply. There's probably 2 or 3 positions.
Yep.
And we go through open days where they all come in, and then we cull it down, and then there's a smaller group, and then there's a smaller group again, and then there's an even smaller group. So it's tough for them, but it's also tough for us because we've got so many great people to choose from. But the reason we have that process isn't to make it hard for them, but to get to know them. And they, for example, on
Mhm.
the final round, each candidate will spend an hour and a half with 7 partners, sort of spread in terms of seniority and practice group.
Right.
And the idea of that is to get to know them as human beings, and we talk just as much about who they are and what they do and what makes them tick as we do about their experience. And from that, we learn what's important to them. Some of them want to be lawyers for very traditional reasons, to make a difference, to uphold the law. Some are incredibly intelligent and want to do very complicated cases. Some want to be advocates, and so I think purpose for all of them will be different. But whatever their purpose is, they tend to be pretty passionate about it. Their thoughts on it are well developed, and they're often telling us things that we've only thought about at a superficial level, have not thought about at all. And so they'll be giving us ideas about how things that we should be doing. And then we say to them, right, well, when you get here, you can be the person that drives that particular initiative, practice idea, client idea,
Right.
and that can be your purpose. So yeah, it's very much an open book for the individual. And obviously, if we don't think, and that's why we have such a deep process, sometimes the purpose for somebody won't mix with our ideals. And I think if somebody said, I want to 90% of my time I want to be doing pro bono stuff, you'd say, well, we're probably not the place.
Right. We're also now starting to talk about culture. So I want to ask both of you, you're new to the firm, Max, so you're getting used to and assimilating with the culture. Tom, you may actually have deliberately thought about what is the culture that you are role modeling and creating within the firm. So tell me a little about the culture you're experiencing, the culture that you're role modeling, and the importance of it firm-wide.
Well, let me go first, Tom. I think there's a sense of relaxation, which is very refreshing. Okay, it's not hierarchical in any heavily structured sense. Of course, there are the leaders in the firm.
Yep.
You know, there's a managing partner, etc. But it's a very relaxed day. But what I mean by that is you might be involved in 3 or 4 or 5 matters during the course of a day, and you'll be pulling together a group for each of them, and there'll be a huge range of seniority within that group. And take a simple example of having an experienced associate from the disputes team alongside a partner from the employment team.
Yep.
And a consultant from what we call special matters and government investigations. We might all 3 come together on something, and we'll be pulling in the same direction. That's very creative, and that's a sort of microcosm of what I find in the firm on 4 months' evidence, which is this incredibly inquisitive approach to the legal market. The legal market's not static. I don't mean the employment market. I mean the legal business that we transact. It is not static. So it's always a case on a daily basis of saying, how can we do more of that? How can we get into an area that we don't think we've been in before? Take an example across economic crime, which is litigated in the commercial division of the High Court, just as much as it's litigated in the Crown Court with judge and jury. It's just sort of different venue. But sometimes the content can be quite similar and the skill set can be similar. What's the government strategy on that? There's an economic crime strategy. What's the new legislation? Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, brand new. And many of the legal principles that act is bringing to bear haven't been on the statute book before. So there's a market. So you want to be in a firm that's inquisitive about that market and on a basis that is not just within your borders, because there's very little law these days that isn't global.
Okay.
Or trends that aren't global. So you want to be somewhere where you can get perspectives from every time zone. And that's what the firm provides.
So in some ways, Tom, that's the lived experience that Max is getting over the last 4 months, but brings many decades of experience to it. How deliberate you as a leader of the business have you been in creating that lived experience?
Very much so. I mean, and when me as a leader, our firm has a number of leaders, so it's very much a group and a team effort. But I think it's spot on. I mean, I would describe that as a confluence of three things that we really focus on. One is high performance. You have to be an elite firm doing elite level work. Everyone has to be a high performer.
Right.
Second of all, you can't, and we've already touched on this. If you're doing a $40 billion case against the government of India, no one by themselves can do that case and keep a client happy and the case well executed. That takes 25 people, and they have to collaborate, and it has to be we, not I.
Right.
So collaboration, because that's the best way to be successful, is really important. And then the third, it sort of goes to Mac's point about sort of relaxation. If clients are paying substantial fees for you to win in an adversarial environment, what would you say to someone doing that for you? It would be a bit like a surgeon carrying out a very intricate surgery. You want them to be calm and detached, and quite relaxed. So I think that's the third part of it, that we sort of have a serenity about what we do, because that makes us the most effective, and it helps a great deal with execution of technical stuff and also collaboration. So I think those three things are the ethos of the firm that's been around for a long time, and by osmosis and by leading by example, it filters down and around. And so there is I think you might be quite surprised in such a dynamic environment where we're fighting really big cases all the time. If you ever came into the office, you'd walk around and think, gee, it's pretty quiet around here. And there's lots of calm conversations going on, and plans being executed, rather than what you might imagine, particularly if we watch Suits and other things. There's a lot of chest thumping and shouting and carrying on. It's not like that at all.
I wonder, the reason I'm so curious about this is because I wonder how much of this is the differentiator. Because if I think about all the amazing law firms in London and around the world, is the technical stuff just the table stakes? Full of great lawyers, table stakes. What is really differentiating the law firms now? What is that? I mean, if you think about it, your clients are probably having the same conversation. They've got technically gifted accountants or engineers or whatever it might be. What's the differentiator nowadays? What's the secret sauce?
I mean, Max, tell me. I'd be really interested to hear your take on that. But I think the law is much more of a people business than perhaps first appearances suggest.
Right.
I mean, the average lawyer in this city each day in a busy practice will be dealing with so many different people in so many different ways. And if you're not a people person, I think you'll really struggle. And I look at the formidable opponents we have, and they tend to be very interesting, curious people who've got vibrant personalities, a lot of drive, and they're the kind of people, and this has happened to me quite a few times, they're the kind of people, if you weren't taking 3 lumps out of each other in a courtroom, you definitely have a coffee with them, because they tend to be interesting. And it's same with clients. So I think sort of personality and drive is a very underestimated but critical part of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I think without repetition, what I'd add to that is, look, as someone who hasn't worked in other city firms, so I'm not directly contrasting with other entities, but what you don't want is what I call a small c conservatism.
Right.
And there are lots of places which have that small c conservatism. It's kind of, this is what we do and this is the way we do it. And, you run down tram lines to try to get to the result because it's worked for you in the past.
Right.
That's different to legal acumen, where, of course, you're picking up things that succeed and sometimes trying to replicate that. But being inventive, creative about how you get the work and then how you do the work, which involves being a people person, as Tom said. It involves being relaxed and calm about operating within your skill set. Linking back to something I said earlier, Adam, about being able to work in a big team but not be intimidated by the big number that's hanging over you on the dispute, because at the end of the day, you can only do what you can do in an individual day. But that multiplies very rapidly. If you've got 25 people on a team, that individual daily effort can be 25 times 1, which is very considerable. If you're conservative about it, you could take an approach that Certain things have to be done in a particular way by particular individuals. But if you come in, put all your resources on the table, and realize that you're bigger than the sum of your parts, then you're not conservative in that sense, and you can be creative in winning and doing the business. And that's the sort of thing that interests me, even in public service. It's about how you are effective and how you have the right people and how you support those people to be at their best. And that runs right across from public sector law into private, even though there are differences in the way we work in other respects.
I had a wonderful guest last week, actually. I was in New York chatting to Lisa Bodell, and she said it's always great. You want to try and get your business into a groove, but not into a rut. And I kind of like that explanation. Let me ask you both a question. Listen, you both achieved incredible things in your careers, and actually I know you're both passionate as well about lifting up the next generation, social mobility as well. We all start life knowing not a great deal, being new, being a sole contributor, but perhaps it's magnified with the careers that you've had. So how have you managed to go from sole contributor to team player to leader? How have you navigated that? Because we all start off as a sole contributor, let's be honest, but there's a journey there. How have you done that? Have you thought about it? Has it just happened, as you say, by osmosis, Tom? You know, you're leading now. I'm actually just come out of leading the CPS, but
I mean, I think Tom's already touched on that by seeing the value in others. You know, from early beginnings through sort of middle ranking up to senior roles, as you say, you've always got to recognise the value of others, because if you don't, people are going to realise that very early on. You know, this guy is a sole trader. He wants to do it all himself.
The lone wolf.
And he's going to trip up sooner or later. He might be a good performer on this or a good performer on that, but it's the ones who can obviously inspire by leading, inspire by example, but see value in others and realise where their skill set is more shallow. None of us have a skill set that is of equal depth right across the legal system. You know, that's not possible. The ones who I think do well are the ones who recognise where what they can do as an individual is bolstered by what others do. So at the CPS, it took 8,000 others to try to make our output look good, and I happen to be at the pinnacle. But very foolish of me to say those are my achievements. They're the achievement of the whole 8,000. And you know, that is true if you're in a mixed team looking at a dispute, or you're, you know, the London branch of a big firm like King Spalding. So I think you've got to recognise that you have a bandwidth. Be confident about that. That's the other thing. Be confident about what you can do well, because if you're just looking for everyone else to take the weight, you'll be found out that way too. So there is a balance here, but don't pretend that you can do it all on your own, and certainly don't take credit for other people's hard work.
Tom, thoughts?
I'm in strong agreement with those points that Max has made, and I think you know, for me, it was sort of an evolution over time, because I think when you're a young lawyer, you're given tasks to do, and you focus on doing a great job on that. As you become more senior, you start being responsible for the supervision of others, for making sure that their work is done well, so that what you present to the people further up the chain is a conglomeration of what you've done and they've done together to get better. And that just keeps going. And I think if you're lucky enough to see the benefits of that, you start, you know, I was a surfer a lot when I was a kid and still do a bit now. It's just like catching a big wave. If you can do it right, the momentum is really powerful. And the classic example for me is when you're in a very big trial and you're opening the case. If you give a seamless one-day presentation, the contributors to that are a huge number of people, from you as the senior advocate right down to the most junior paralegal, who's ensured that the electronic bundles are in perfect order, that the judge has got them, that the references you have all connect. And if you can get everybody on that team thinking they've got an important job to do and that they're a very important cog in the wheel, you're empathetic to their needs, and they're therefore as driven as you, it's amazing. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work on a lot of cases where we've walked out, and I can tell that the other side and the panel of judges or arbitrators that we've had are kind of a little bit envious of the way we get on and work together, and that there's a lot of camaraderie and respect. And so I think it's the power of it working well that it is very addictive, and then so you find yourself doing as many things possible to make sure that's how it is. And on the rare occasion when you bump into a squeaky wheel or someone who doesn't buy into that, it's very stark, and you realize how damaging it can be if you don't have that sort of collaboration and so on. So yeah, it's one of those things that's self-fulfilling if you can get it right.
Now, there are many times when there is something happening which is going to monopolize your thoughts as a leader. Max, we talked about some of those things when you went into the CPS, but Max has also talked about, for you, Tom, maybe the office move and moving everything and everyone and everything that goes with it across London. Max, you outline the move, and Tom, as Max is just describing that, you can give us a quick shot out the window. So, Max, what's happened? Where's the firm gone and to? And Tom is giving us a little bit of a what are we looking at?
So what we're looking down on, literally, is 125 Old Broad Street,
right,
which is very close to the Bank of England. And you can see the court of the bank.
That's meant to be a summer's day, by the way. Can I just say we're nearly June, and look at it.
And that's where we were with, I don't know what it was, about 3 floors on, I think, a building that was originally built for the stock exchange.
Yeah.
And so King Spalding had been there for some time. We've moved about 500 metres to number 8 Bishopsgate, where not only did we have many more dedicated floors, but we got our own staircase running right through the core of the building. And that's like a metaphor, if you like, for joining practice groups and joining all the people together. We're all in touch with each other without even having to get in the lift.
Tom, what was it like to lead that?
And I feel...
unless you're trying to get over it.
No, I feel uncomfortable with the lead because really, we've got... There's no law firm, successful law firm, that doesn't have a great set of managers and staff, and we're blessed with some great people. It was a big effort. It's taken a long time. I mean, I think probably the funniest thing was I got stuck in court, and so turned up late for a meeting of the committee that we'd put together of a cross section of the office to talk about decor. And I got there, and there was 3 people having a very lively and dramatic debate about whether brown was an appropriate color for things. So that you bumped into things like that, but it really was like a mini space shuttle mission, because you've got, a number of very busy lawyers who are going to leave their office on a Friday and come in on a Monday, or some working over the weekend, and everything had to be seamless. So there's a lot of communication, a lot of pre-planning, and there was a lot of getting rid of stuff, clearing out offices well in advance, and also picking things that people would find most stressful if they didn't have them. So IT was obviously a priority, and some people have got in their offices things that are near and dear to them. So making sure they had a special box to put their special things in, those kinds of things. But not unlike doing a big case, lots of moving parts, lots of complication, but with calm thought and pre-planning and execution, it was amazingly smooth. But to be honest with you, the leadership was really sitting back and watching it all as all of the great people did their thing.
There's a lot of talk at the moment in relation to how we work, the space that we work in, and the pandemic has shone a very big spotlight on that. Did that have an impact on the space that you created, Tom? Is there something that you kind of have been deliberate about?
Yes. Yeah, we had a really big think, and got a lot of data, and had a lot of discussion, a lot of interaction with everybody about which way to take it. And there were sort of choices. You could shrink the workspace quite considerably and make it more communal, or you could take the approach of making it more attractive and quieter spaces and better common areas. So you're incentivizing people to come into the office and work together. as opposed to sort of shrinking the size, making it all communal, and making coming to the office sort of a less attractive proposition. And we wholeheartedly went for the make the office more attractive. So get more space, do more quiet space, really ramp up on the common areas, because we sincerely believe that collaboration, working together, seeing each other regularly, and being in the office most of the time is really, really important to what we do. But the great thing about the pandemic, we have to be positive about these things, is it made us think about these things and look at it far more closely than we would have if there hadn't have been a pandemic.
And perhaps change things that we historically thought we would never change or couldn't change. Finishing up here, gents, let me ask you both a question, and I'm going to have a bit of fun with you both. What's the best piece of leadership advice that you've ever given or received? Now, you're both...
You want to go first, Max?
We're both thinking about this, aren't we?
Yeah, Max says he's grateful. Away you go, Tom.
All right. So the best I ever received was from my first boss, who was a very experienced but grizzled courtroom lawyer in Sydney. And we walked out of a hearing having done very, very well.
Yeah.
And he said to me, whatever you're feeling now, don't get addicted to it, because it'll pass very quickly. But he said, when you're the other guy, the party who just got whipped by the judge, don't be too despondent, because that too will pass very quickly. And it was sort of, yeah, okay, I get it. And I've certainly followed that throughout. Don't when the going gets tough, it will pass. And when it's going well, get worried, because trouble's around the corner.
Max, what are you thinking?
I think I'm going to take one from sort of later on in the career.
Yeah.
And maybe this is an odd example, but it's being in the middle of a major case. Maybe I won't say what the case was, but a major trial where I was the number 2 on the team, and number 1 fell ill, and quite seriously ill. And we came in to court early that morning, as you always did, and we realized there was a problem. And we were at a pivotal stage in the case. And so the leader just couldn't go on.
Right.
You know, this person needed to be put in transport for medical attention. And so we went to see the judge. This is one of the occasions when you could legitimately go and see the judge behind the scenes to see what was going to happen. And I knew what the judge's question was going to be. It was going to be, are you ready to go on? You're going to have to step up, because that's what you're there for when you're in the 2 seat. And so I was anticipating the question. And when the judge said to me, this is 9:00 in the morning, when are you going to be ready to carry on? I said, because I'd thought about it, how would 2:00 be? So I was going to ask him for the whole court morning, which I thought was a big ask, because it's expensive to convene a court. And he looked at me and he said, no. And then he paused, and that was a moment of panic on my part. He said, it'll be 10:00 tomorrow morning. Off you go. And what he was saying was, you are in the hot seat, but, I understand what it means, asking you to step up in this way. I'm going to give you for longer than you thought you needed, because you probably need a bit longer. So I'm going to double your time, but we'll come back tomorrow morning and I'll expect you to be on it. And so with the support of others on the team, I think there was about 3 hours sleep that night, maybe about 2.5. And come 10:00, we were ready to go. And in that case, it was a set piece of advocacy, which then took 2 hours. So, but the message was this much more senior person understood and was with me and was expecting me to do it, but was prepared to give a bit of leeway to make sure. And psychologically, actually, I thought that was very smart and reassuring.
Would you have been ready for 2?
I'd have had to been, wouldn't I?
You don't have to answer that, Max.
But that would have been very much like the duckling who may not look too bad over the surface, but my God, there've been a lot of peddling underneath.
Yeah. I'm going to finish with some quick fire
Max
questions.
was born ready.
That's right, he was born ready. Some quick fire questions. I'm going to do some either or questions, and I'm going to flick between you. It's a bit of fun to end up. So, Max, I'll start with you. Going out or staying in?
Going out.
Okay, Tom. Texting or calling?
Texting.
Okay. Max, train or plane?
Plane.
Oh, Tom, live forever or be remembered?
Live forever.
Oh, look at that. Max, be loved or feared? That's a good one, isn't it?
Loved.
Okay. Tom, bagels or toast?
Toast.
Max, remote work or face-to-face?
Face-to-face.
Okay. Tom, see the future or change the past?
See the future.
Max, sport or music?
Music.
And Tom, this is an interesting one. Live in the same place or travel the world?
Travel the world.
Yeah, I thought it might be with that. Listen, Tom, Max, thanks so much for being amazing guests on the Leadership Enigma. I appreciate it. I am coming to see this wonderful office that I've seen little bits of from that window. Tom, take great care. Max, thanks for being a superstar.
Thanks for your time, Adam.
Thanks,
All right,
Adam.
all. Take care.
Thanks.
Join us again next week for more curiosity and insight with the Leadership Enigma. We'd love to hear your comments on today's show as well as suggestions for future topics and guests. Get in touch with me on LinkedIn or visit us at www.leadersenigma.com. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe on all your major podcast platforms and on our dedicated YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining the community.